Hello, and welcome to today's episode of The Scoop, where seniors can overcome obstacles proactively. My name is Denise, and with me today is Walter Miranda. Walter is here to talk with us about his perspective of choosing the hospice for your mom. I know Walter personally, he's a good friend of mine, and his story has rang true to my heart to make sure that we're always doing things right in the medical field. But tell us a little bit about you. You lost your mom a year ago?
Yeah, January 5th, 2020.
Okay.
Right at the beginning of the year.
All right.
And so she was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer the previous August. So
Okay.
we got the diagnosis in August, and then she ended up dying in January. And, you know, I was with her through the whole process. Like from beginning to end, I watched her decline. And, you know, I always thought, like, oh, she's going to come out of it, you know? Like, people are, like, telling me, you know, oh, it's stage 4, like, watch out. It's not, like, it could be, like, you're good luck, basically, is what people were telling me. Like, whenever I told them that was the diagnosis. So when we kind of knew, inevitably, she's not going to make it, right? It's just a matter of when. And she was very upfront about how she wanted to die, which was, like, you know, she didn't want a big fancy funeral. She just wanted it really simple. She wanted to have dignity when she left, like, you know, like, and also she also said, like, don't put me on a ventilator. Like, if I have to go on a ventilator and become a vegetable, just take me. Like, I'm good.
Right.
You know, she was very, like, upfront about, you know, not having to hang on to the very last breath, you know.
Okay.
So we're at the hospital and we get the news that the chemo isn't taking, right? And at this point, I'm still like, okay, well, what do we do?
Right.
You know?
What's the next solution?
What's the next solution? Where do we go from here? And they're like, well, we're going to send you to a rehabilitation center, get her, like, try to get her a little more healthy, and then try to come back to do chemo. And I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Little did I know that's not a real thing. Like, you don't just go get healthy again to do chemo again because, you know, you're already dying. And so, and then we started talking about, well, where do we go from the hospital? And she wanted like 24-hour nursing care. She wanted, you know, she didn't necessarily want to go home at that time, but she did want, wherever she was going to go, she wanted to have, like, a 24-hour nurse so that me and my dad weren't having to, like, take care of everything, you know?
Okay.
And then the hospital is telling us, well, you know, there's only two hospices in town, you know, this one and this one.
Oh, wow.
And I thought we were going to, like, get a list and go through, you know, interview all of them. You know, they all come to the hospital, you interview with them and, you know, get their sales pitch and stuff. And then I had a friend who had worked at one of these hospices, and she's telling me, oh, it's the best, like, they have the best care, like, they're going to take care of your mom, like great, like, you should totally go with them. And I went and visited these two hospices, and one of them looked nicer. It was, like, clean. There was, like, I don't know, maybe 10 to 12 beds, kind of quiet, smelled good. I went to the other hospice that my friend's telling me about, and it looked like a crappy 80s movie. Really terrible lighting, very dingy. Like, you go down this dark hallway into, like, this poorly lit elevator. You go up 3 floors, and then you get to the floor, and it's, like, it's just not good, you know? And I was like, this is it. Like, is this when she's telling me has the best care, you know? And they give you a little tour of everything. And I'm like, and I'm thinking to my friend, talking to my friend, like, if this is what you're telling me is the best one, I don't know any different, I'll go with it. Like, I'll take your word for it, you know? And I didn't even look at any other hospices. And that was it. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So the next day, we ended up going there. And
so they transferred her right from the hospital straight to...
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So they came with, like, a van, like an ambulance van. Mm-hmm. And I rode with it in her. And, you know, took a selfie with her. I was like, hey, Mom.
Being an awesome, supportive son that you are.
Thanks. Yeah. And she showed up still coherent.
Yeah.
Like, she wasn't knocked out. She wasn't, you know, a vegetable. I was like, hey, Mom, you doing all right? She's like, yeah, doing okay.
Yeah.
Like, all right, cool. And then we get there, and as we wheel into this dark hallway, I can just tell she like sank a little. And I was like, oh shit, like where are we? And then we get into the elevator and I'm like, oh God, like this isn't good. And then it also starts kicking in how close she is to death.
Right.
I'm like, oh,
because maybe through this journey you hadn't realized that that's where you were.
Not really.
Okay.
Like I was a little more clueless than everybody, I guess.
Well, you're
like,
a very optimistic person, so I'm assuming your mom was very optimistic.
Yes.
So is your family an optimistic family?
Yes.
So do you think that's what it was? That maybe instead of just looking at the negative side of it, y'all were just trying to stay positive on the good?
I think there was a lot of like positivity, like, hey, whatever we can do, we're going to do it. My mom and my dad were definitely more realists.
Okay.
But I think they wanted to show positivity and optimism toward us.
To like help support you?
Yeah. Like, don't freak out, you know, be positive.
Right.
And then, but also just the way the hospital talked about it.
Right.
Like, they didn't say, oh, well, you got 5 more days to live, you should go find a hospice. It was very...
Well, they probably don't know that.
Right.
I mean, they can't give you an exact day countdown. Sometimes they can kind of try to give you a guesstimate of what it looks like, but you didn't even get that.
Not really.
Okay.
It was like, well, we're going to keep trying. And I was like, But then the way the doctor said goodbye to her was like kind of a telling sign. Like she came in and was like, I really liked you. I really wanted to say goodbye. Like waited for like 10 minutes to like walk in. I was like, she must really like my mom. And it was like, oh.
One of our medical directors has mentioned that we get to go through this many times, but the families that we come in touch with only get to go through it one time.
Yeah.
So based on your experience, what is it that you feel like it's important for our audience to know? Because your outcome wasn't necessarily a positive one. Your hospice experience wasn't necessarily a positive one.
Yeah.
What do you feel like that would be important from your experience that people know or do?
One thing that I would tell other people is to look at more hospices.
Okay.
Like, there's more than 2.
Yeah.
Like, go find more. Like, there are more options to look at. And think about where, it's a weird thing to say, but think about where you want to die. Where do you want your mom to die?
Right.
Where would you want your parents to die? Like, in a dingy, poorly lit, like bars on the window kind of hospice, or even at your home. Like then that's where we ended up wanting to go anyway, was going back home.
But she didn't make it back home.
It didn't make it back home.
Okay.
Like we were so close.
Yeah.
Didn't get there.
Did you all have that conversation before?
Yes. Okay. So originally she wanted to be in like a facility that had care, like all the way to the end.
And but do you think that she was making that decision based on you and your dad or herself?
I think she was making that decision based on she didn't want the burden to be on us.
Right.
To take care of her.
She was being mom.
Yeah. And also it was like, I don't want you to mess it up for me. Like let them handle it, their doctor.
Right.
And then, but then once we were in there for a while, I noticed, well, the first thing I noticed, there was no like life-saving devices anywhere. I was like, well, what if something bad happens? And they're like, it's like, oh, well, you're not here to get better. Right. That's not the plan here. And that is one thing I wish I had known going in, was what it is really like to go to a hospice facility. And like when you go there, you're not really coming out like a better version of you. Like you're dying. You're gonna die like on the other end, most likely, right? And that was like kind of a shock for me. I don't know. Yeah. I guess I should have known, but I didn't.
But like, how would you know? So that's where I feel like that, and and that's why to me this show is so important, that we're educating not just seniors but also the children of seniors, that they know what to expect. They know what questions to ask. Maybe somebody gets a part of one of these shows and they're like, oh, wow, I should know from hearing that story that I need to ask more questions.
Yeah.
Because when we're in the thick of it, we are not thinking straight either. We're not. Like our loved ones are right there, and we're having to make very life decisions. They're life-ending decisions that we're not sometimes really thinking like, oh, I should know. I should be asking A, B, C, and D. That's not really where our thought process is.
No, not at all.
And I'm very sorry that you had to go through what you went through. I know that you're an awesome person, and
Thank
you are a part of your mother, and your mother lives on in you, which is so wonderful because you can see her and you all the time. So
I'm definitely blessed to have had her as my mom,
yeah,
like 110%. Like I wouldn't be who I am without her, you
Right.
know? And I just wanted those last moments to be like good for her. You know, if I had any control over it, if I could like help in any way, like throughout the process, I was like, dude, at the very least, well now that I'm thinking about it later, but I'm like at the very least, like let her die with dignity, you know.
yeah,
And we did the very best we could. And the only like, you know, kind of crap decision we made was that uh, she went to this like dirty hospice, you know, um, and the other one was just a decision away, you know, or even dying at home would have been like nicer, you know. Um, and yeah, if I had known that I had more choice, I think that would have helped out a lot.
So you wish that you would have had a little bit more education on knowing if there were other hospices that provided crisis care in the home.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to education.
Education.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
like a list of services that you get with hospice or something would be like awesome.
And don't be
Or like,
afraid to ask questions.
yeah.
I think that would be the in your story, in your scenario, that would be the one thing that I think that would be big that you tell other people or even your friends. You're gonna encounter all kinds of friends that have to go down the road
Mm-hmm.
that you went down. And we don't know why things happen to us, but I believe sometimes things happen for us so that we can help other people find their way.
Yeah.
And if we keep our eyes on that sometimes, and that's positive, I'm very positive minded, I always try to find the positive in it, then your experience may prevent someone that you love and care about in your future from having to go down the road you did.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like every chance I get to tell somebody that like what my experience is like I give them the whole spiel. I give them the whole story. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, if like don't be afraid to talk to your parents about how they want to die. Don't be
And
afraid
that's
to
it right there. I mean, that's
yeah.
huge. I mean, like, yeah, we
Yeah.
can talk about education, but also having those uncomfortable conversations with our
Yeah.
parents. Because nobody wants to sit and talk with their parents about those things. We want to sit and think we're going to be with our parents forever.
Yeah.
But that's not real.
No.
It's not real life.
It could happen like that.
It could.
Yeah. And
Thank
like
you.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
welcome.
I
Thanks for asking me
appreciate
these
you.
questions.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us for today's episode of The Scoop. If you're interested in Abundant Hospice Services, call the number at the bottom of the screen or visit their website at abundanthospicecare.com.
And trying to think of like what questions I would ask.
You want me to ask you that question?
If they have like 24-hour nurses, if the hospice facility has like an in-home hospice care, and if they do 24-hour nursing, because they said they didn't, and they lied, and they actually did.
Oh, you mean like if they had crisis care?
Yes.